All right, welcome back to another video on our node by node challenge where we're going through every single node within the shading workspace within Blender 4.3. So we are on the converters section of the nodes, and today we're going to be talking about combined color. Combined color is a very simple node where it basically has three inputs: a red, a green, and a blue, and one output, which is the color. So it's basically taking a mixture of the three and outputting them to one single color. You also instead can use the HSV values, which is hue, saturation, and value, which you can control it that way. Or you can use HSL, which is hue, saturation, and lightness. Slightly different than the hue, saturation value. Most people use the RGB, and the basic form of this, you basically just plug it in, and as you move around the combination of the colors, it's going to give you different colors, which we have tons of nodes that do that. So why in the world would you want to do this? Well, this can be useful if you're separating and creating channels for different things. So I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, that you took and you had some sort of vector math node that you decided that was coming from another texture that you're making, and you wanted to be able to branch off and create three separate channels that you're going to have three different layers of your texture. So essentially you could use what's called a separate RGB node, okay, or separate color. You could plug it into that, and now what you have is you have three different channels. You have a red channel that comes off here, which doesn't really matter what you're putting here. I'm just using this as an example. But let's say that you had three different channels where you created something, and then at the end you're gonna input them back in to these three values, and it's gonna convert each one into a numerical value. So you would have, whatever your formula is that you created on here, and then you combine them all to one color. Now, there's some other uses for this. There's people that'll use it to create a roughness map or a normal map on there, depending on what you're trying to do. But the basic thought process behind it is it's just going to take three different numbers, input them in for red, green, and blue, and then output them to one color. So, there's a lot of different ways, like I said, that you can use this, but that's the most simplest form of it, is just understanding that. And because you have so many different nodes that can create color, it's just a matter of what do you need to connect to them prior to that color. That's really what makes you decide about which one of these nodes you use, because any of them will output a color. So you just have to decide, do I need something before that color to be able to put in here, or is it something simple where you can just plug in a color? So hopefully that helps, gives you a little basics about the combined color node here. And if you'd like this, make sure you like, follow, share, and stay tuned for my next video.